Hi, everybody. I miss you. I miss being in your presence. I'm Tina Turley, the executive producer of Theater Tuscaloosa. And though we can't be together, we can at least see each other virtually. So this is the first of our Masterclass Mondays, a series to give you, our supporters, an insight into a variety of theatrical subjects and to stay in touch with you. Each of these sessions will be conducted by Theater Tuscaloosa affiliated artists and will give folks an opportunity to get to know us better from the inside out. It's like a series of virtual backstage tours where each of your tour guides is an expert in their field. Each Masterclass Monday will further our goal of spreading joy by connecting audiences with the inspiring variety of work that goes into making each and every one of Theater Tuscaloosa's productions unique, artistic, and joyful. So welcome to the first Masterclass Monday. Today I'm going to be talking about producing and directing. A producer is different than a director. A producer has to look at the overall vision of the entire season and the company and making sure that the mission of a company is fulfilled with all the things that we do. A director is a person who helms the artistic vision of a particular show. Sometimes a director gets to pick the play that they're going to direct, and sometimes they, because a director has a certain style, we know that they're really good at a certain thing, and so we hire them for their area of expertise in a certain type of show. But as a producer, my job is to make sure that we're always fulfilling the mission of Theater Tuscaloosa, and we're doing it both in the production and from the audience perspective and from everybody involved. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what it's like for us to choose a season. When you come see a show, sometimes you might just think, hey, they're going to put on a show. But there's actually a lot of thought that goes into picking a season. So let's talk a little bit about that when choosing a season. Our job is to hold the mirror up to nature. That is from Shakespeare's Hamlet. We want to make sure that we are doing things that reflects what's going on in the world and that we are relevant. So we think about that when we're looking at plays. We want to look at plays and musicals that speak to something that we are dealing with. You also have to think about the availability and the appropriateness of the talent that you have. You've got to think about production costs, things that benefit the show or the project, the benefits that it will bring to the company. Is it going to bring in income? Rarely as nonprofits do we make money. When we do these big shows, often we don't make money just on our ticket sales alone because we don't run a show long enough. The reason why Broadway shows make money is that they run for long periods of time. But we don't. And so we depend on gifts and sponsorships and grants to supplement what we are not making in ticket sales. So we have to think about, can we at least break even? And so cost is very much an important factor in what we consider doing. Also, we look at a piece and say, is there critical acclaim? Is this the hottest new show out there? Yes, I would love to be doing Hamilton, but we can't get the rights to it right now. And so we just have to wait until the rights become available, and it will be the hottest ticket in town. So we look at what's going on out there in the world and we see what we can do to bring that to our audiences. We also pick shows to raise awareness on certain subjects, and it all goes back to the play and the quality of the play. And sometimes plays raise awareness, make us think about things. It's not our job as artists to provide the answers. Our job is to provide the work that makes us ask questions that you, as an audience member, then find your own answers for. And then as a producer, I have to think about how the whole season fits together. So not just one show, but a variety of shows and how they all fit together. So as a director, what's the first thing that I have to think about when I'm directing a show? Well, the first thing I think that you have to think about is what is your connection to this play or musical? If I'm going to direct Wit, which I did not direct, Jeff Wilson did a good job with that in 2015, but we have to figure out our own personal connection as directors to the play. And you have to make sure that you're finding everything you can connect with and why this play would be important. People ask me, what's your favorite play? And I always say, whatever I'm directing at the time. And I have to mean that. I have to be in love with the show that I am doing at the time, whether it be a play, a musical, or a review. I have to fall in love with it, and I have to connect with it, and I have to live with it, and make sure that I'm connected to it. So that's the first thing I have to do, is find my personal connection to the play. Then I do research. This all happens sometimes a year or two before we actually even think about producing the show. But I research the playwright. If you're going to produce a Tennessee Williams play, you really need to research Tennessee Williams and his life. I think it's really important that you know him, that you know about his family, that you understand how he grew up, his relationship to his sister and to his parents. Understanding that helps you understand his plays. And as a director, you want to make sure that you are really connecting with that playwright. So doing research on the playwright, doing research on other works, reading other plays that a playwright has written, just knowing all you can know about that playwright and their life and the things that were going on around them when they wrote the play. The next thing, I think, we have to research the time period. We have to research not only the time period that the play was written, but I think it's important to research the time period that it's set in. Most people think about researching the time period that it's set in, but they're not always necessarily thinking about the time period that it was written. I'll give you an example. If you're looking at doing The Crucible by Arthur Miller, you need to understand that Arthur Miller wrote that in a response to the McCarthy era, when there were people being blacklisted and being brought on charges of communism, and sort of a witch hunt, I guess, of artists. And so his response was to set a play in the Salem witch trials, and it paralleled what was going on in that time period that he was living in. It's also important to understand what's going on politically, to look at the art of the time period, and you know, what some of the habits are, what trends were, what fashion was. So understanding the time period, both that it was written in and the time period that it's set in. You also want to do research on location. Where is it set? You really got to understand New Orleans if you're going to do A Streetcar Named Desire. You have to research. You have to establish that, creating that environment. So knowing the location that the play is set in is an important part of your research. Production history. Some people think, well, why do you need to understand other productions of this play? Well, sometimes the greatest artists are inspired by other art. And so sometimes I look and see how a director has done something, and it makes me develop what I want to do with the piece. Of course, also too, great art is often stolen. So we get ideas from other people. Sometimes we incorporate them, but we try to make them our own and do what is the very best for our production. So doing research and figuring it out, what our point of view is going to be, and what it is that we're really going to, what part of the whole thing that we're looking at as we tell the story, what's important. So we go into script analysis, which I use Aristotle's Poetics, the components of tragedy, and this applies to tragedy, comedy, musicals, or whatever. But These elements, plot, character, theme, language, melody or rhythm, spectacle. Which of these elements rises to the top, or are they all present? Most of the time they're all present, but sometimes you'll have something more dominant. Tennessee Williams characters are as important, if not more, than the plot sometimes. If you're doing a Chekhov play, the characters are more important, and the rhythm and the language they use rather than the plot. They tend to sit around and talk a lot but don't go anywhere. So, which is really important. If you're thinking about language, Shakespeare, you have to think about the language and the rhythm and the melody of the pace of that language. If you're doing David Mamet, you have to understand the staccato rhythm of the way David Mamet writes. And then, of course, spectacle. You have to think about all the technical elements. Are they going to be a big part of the storytelling, or are they just complementing the storytelling, or are they the story? King Kong and Spider-Man on Broadway were very spectacle driven, and that, they were amazing spectacles to look at, and that became a very important part of what the director was looking at, the emphasis was. So those are things, the script analysis are things that you have to think about. And what is it that is the point of view? You as the director, what's the point of view of the play, and how are you going to tell it? And then how you communicate that with your designers. It's a terrific picture of our production of Ain't Misbehavin' in 2013. This is a review, and so I did the research on Fats Waller, who's the composer that's being celebrated through Ain't Misbehavin', but there was a technical component to it, even though it was not real strong storyline. It was just a review, but I wanted to make sure that we were creating an atmosphere that was akin to his time period. So spectacle was something we thought very much about when we were doing this show. Okay, and then you have to think about, after you've done your analysis and come up with your point of view, then you meet with your designers and you listen to them and their ideas and what the script said to them, and you begin to create a cohesiveness. Your job is to get the best work out of all your designers and make sure that they're communicating with each other, and making sure that there is everybody's on the same page as far as style, as far as design. You want to make sure that your lighting designer knows what colors the set is going to be, and that the costumes are going to be, because a gel and a lighting instrument can change the color of a costume. So you want to make sure that everybody's on the same page. What style are you doing? Realism, fantastic realism, representational. There's all kinds of different styles, and you have to stop and ask yourself, what style are we going to tell this story? And you try to pick the style that is the best way to tell that playwright's story. And so you have to be careful sometimes that as a director, we want to be real creative and we want to get very theatrical, when sometimes that may not be necessary. Sometimes just the actor standing there in a costume is as powerful as any scenery piece that can be flown in. But sometimes the scenery piece can change the mood of a character. And so all those elements have to work together. And my job as a director is to make sure that my designers are on the same page and that we're looking at things from the same point of view and the same style, and I'm getting the best work out of those designers. So I'm excavating their greatness and bringing the best product to the table. So the designers go back and they're doing their drawings and they're putting things in the shop, and we get to move on to the next component after having the designs, and that is casting the show. Casting is one of the most difficult things because it's very personal. The product an actor is selling is themselves, and so it's a very sensitive thing. You can have two great actors, but you pick one over the other because of a hair color or a height or just a number of things. And it's not personal. It's about creating the best picture for the show. But you really want to make sure that whoever you cast, that they work well with others. I would rather have somebody that I know will do great work because their reputation precedes them, as opposed to working with somebody that is known as a great actor but is difficult to work with, because we all have to live and breathe with each other for 6 days a week, 3 hours a night. And so it's, when I'm casting a show, I really think about, how a group of people gets along and how well they're going to work together. And I pick the best actors that will tell the story the best. This sometimes disappoints people when they don't get cast, but I always know that when you audition, there's a little thing that goes on in my memory, and I remember your audition and I remember you, and you may not be right for that show, but there's an opportunity down the line, and I'll be thinking about you as I consider future shows and casting. So casting is sometimes a tedious process, and the thing as a director is I'm looking to get the best out of the actor as well. And so during the audition process, my question has to be, what is the best thing for the show? Who is the best person to tell this story, and how can we all fit together? So we cast the show, and we're excited. We've got the show in shops being built, and so then we move into the rehearsal process. The rehearsal schedule, we do a read through. At that time, we often will have the whole cast sitting around and we read the play. If it's a musical, sometimes we will actually sight sing through the music, and just sort of the first impressions. We also have our designers do a design presentation at that first read through usually, and we get a sense of the style and the point of view that everyone can be on the same page. So all that sort of technical stuff gets done at the read through, and then you get a chance to hear it and hear the actors as they bring their first impressions to it. Then you do table work, where you sit around and you talk about the characters and what they want, and the tactics they're going to use to get what they want, the obstacles that are in the way of getting what they want, and then do they get it or do they not? And then the overall theme of the play and how you work that into the moments. But the main thing is, as a director, you're trying to get the best moment and put those moments together to tell the story in the best way possible. Then you get it up on its feet. We're still holding the script at this point. We're doing blocking, or some people like to call it blocking and tackling. It's very much like football. You have X's and O's. You have in your script, cross down right, so that an actor knows that on a certain line they're going to cross the stage to the actor's right. And if an actor is doing it well, and if it's directed well, it looks like it's being done for the first time every night. So blocking is a very important part of making pictures, so that the audience doesn't get bored, it doesn't get too static, and that we are really thinking about not only what is being said, but how it's being said and what it looks like. Then we go into tech rehearsals, where we add technical elements, the fully realized props, the lights, the scenery. Then after we might add some music, orchestra at that point. All the technical elements come together, and the last thing we add are costumes. We may have been wearing pieces of costumes so that the actors get used to working in them, and rehearsal skirts and that sort of thing. But we finally put the clothing on them, and then eventually put the hair and makeup, and we have dress rehearsals. Then you go into previews. If you're doing a professional show, you'll have previews sometimes, particularly if you're doing a new work. You do previews, and the playwright goes back and works on it and then makes some changes and comes back. So previews is a chance for the audience to give you some reaction and response, and as a director, and you're sitting there with the writer and seeing what works. But usually previews are just sort of tightening the belt on everything and getting an audience in there. we do a Pay What You Can preview, which is essentially just a performance, but it gives us a chance to put an audience in there and see how they react. And so I give notes after that Pay What You Can based on the ebb and flow of the audience feedback as I'm watching the audience watch the show. Then we do opening night and get into the run of the show. If I were a director being brought in from out of town, a lot of times I leave. And then the show becomes the stage manager's. The stage manager runs the show and makes sure that they're doing the show that has indeed been rehearsed, and not taking liberties. But as a director and producer, I watch the show through its run. And if I see some things that I think we can tweak, I'll go up usually to the dressing room and talk to the actors as they're getting putting their makeup on, that sort of thing, and just tweaking here and there. But for the most part, I don't really give notes once we get started unless it's absolutely necessary, if we've gotten off track or if there's been a huge discovery and we go, hey, we need to make this change. So you get in the run of the show, and then you end the show, and on the community theater level, we strike the show together. We take the set down, we put the costumes in the wash and put the props up and put that to bed, and have some form of evaluation that we look at and see what we did right and what we could do better the next time around. So then you get ready to do it all over again. It takes about, for our company, 4 to 6 weeks to put on a play. If you were doing equity production, you often could put a play up in 8 days. Sometimes musicals take longer than that, but you're working 8-hour days if you're working with professional actors. But we work 6 days a week, 3 hours a night, for 4 to 6 weeks for a play and 6 to 8 weeks for a musical. And we work really hard. We have a lot of fun, and then it's gone. And that's the beauty of live theater, is that it's in the moment. You have to be in the moment. That's the beauty of seeing things live. You can't interact with me because I'm being recorded. If you laugh, I can't hear you. That's the beauty of the live performance, is that we're all in it together in the moment. And it will come back. We'll be back together, enjoying live theater once again. But that's the beauty of it, is that we're all there together. So really, what is my job as a director, really as a producer? It's, as Catherine Tucker Wyndham says, we tell our stories so we can learn to listen to one another. That's really what theater is about. It's about telling stories that make us think, make us laugh, let us commune together. Right now we're in an intermission, so to speak, where we can't gather together in the theater, but that will come back. And in the meantime, we'll try to continue to spread joy as best we can. But we tell stories. We tell it together in a way that is entertaining and thought-provoking and unique and artistic. Now, as a producer, I have to think about how we're going to tell those stories and how we're going to make that happen. And so one of the things that we did several years ago is create an endowment named after Paul and Susan Looney. Paul was a producer for Theater Tuscaloosa for many, many years, and really led the way in making things happen for this company. And Susan, his wife, was a choreographer and also managing director later. And the two of them really put their heart and soul. We are their children. We named an endowment after them so that we could, in case there were an emergency, if we could raise $1 million, that we would never touch the principal unless an emergency happened. We had to dip into it, but our goal is to not ever have to dip into it, but let it be there, and then the interest compounds and we put it back into itself, and it's there if we need it. But I would not be a good producer if I didn't say, hey, if you believe in us, give to that endowment. And you can find out more information about it at theatertust.com, because we know things are going to happen. We don't always know what they're going to be. We don't know that there's going to be a pandemic, but or a tornado or something like that. But we have to plan for the future, and that's what we're trying to do with the endowment. So that's one of the things we're focusing on while we're sort of at intermission right now with the COVID virus, is making sure that we continue to raise money for that endowment. So that's the producer in me saying, support us. It's important. We can't do what we do without you. As an artist, my heart just hurts that I can't be with you in the same room as we enjoy a story together. But I know that we'll be together again. And I'm not going to get too sentimental about it because I know we'll be back together soon. In the meantime, I hope you'll join us for our Masterclass Mondays as we explore other areas of the theater from different artists and different artist perspectives. Make sure that you're checking in with us at theatertest.com and on our Facebook pages and Twitter and all those other things, Instagram, to find out what we're doing and keep up with us as we put programming together during this weird time in our lives. In the meantime, be caring, be kind, think of others, try to spread your own joy, but don't spread the virus. The best way to do that is, of course, to stay 6 feet apart, stay home when you can, and wear your mask, because it's not about you, it's about the other person. So until we meet again, I hope you enjoy our Masterclass Mondays. I hope that you will continue to experience joy in your life and that you'll consider others, wear your mask, stay home when you can, or at least stay 6 feet apart. Y'all have a great one. Join us again for our next Masterclass Monday. Until then, have a great, great day.